Hello, and welcome to another fully live Q&A episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Cody Kinsey. I'm a security researcher at Varonis, and today I have my good friend Alex Lin here to answer some Q&A questions about hacking and probably some of the news topics we talked about on the last Friday stream.
Right.
So also, I wanted to remind everyone, if you have a great question, then make sure to submit it on our Twitter or on the YouTube channel, and we will pick a question every week to win a Hack5 gift card. So if we pick your question on Friday from this stream, then you will win $100, which is really awesome. So yeah, let's go ahead and I just want to say hello to everybody in the chat. We will try to get to your questions and answer things. Not sure if we can get to things as complicated as what is the meaning of life. We're still working on that as well. However, you know, some other things like whether Tupac is still alive, we can definitely answer. So definitely keep these questions coming because they look really good so far. But first off, let's go ahead and take a question from our YouTube channel. So we go through and check the YouTube channel to see if we have any questions every week, and we pick the best ones to answer. So Alex, what's the first one we have today?
This one is, does Reaver Pixie WPS attack still work? As far as I know.
So let's talk about Reaver. That is a really interesting tool and one of my favorite tools for hacking Wi-Fi. But some things have changed. So can you explain what Reaver does and how it works?
I actually forget how the exploit works, but I know it uses something that's wrong with how WPS pins are generated on routers.
Right. So the original Reaver is basically a brute forcing tool for WPS setup pins. And so let me go back and explain what that is. A WPS WPS setup pin can be brute forced because it's just a number that is kind of assigned to the router to be able to completely reset it or dump the configuration settings if you ever lose them. So this is often printed on the back of the router, and unfortunately there was a flaw in the way that this number was authenticated, where the number was basically split up into two segments and then validated independently. And if you're a hacker, that means that you can basically start looking for each half of the number, and you don't need to brute force the whole thing. So you take a problem that's like a brute forcing problem where you have like an 8-character long pin or something like that, and then you cut it in half, so you're dealing with like 2 4s. It's a little slightly more complicated than that, but the basic thing about it is if you have consistent access to the target for long enough, so if you're in range for long enough, you can run this attack, and it should be able to get the correct WPS setup pin, and that gets you access to the real password. It gets you access to everything. You can completely control the router. So this has been changed by rate limiting. Can you explain how that would mess up this attack?
Based off context clues, I think that would just not let you be able to attempt to use these WPS pins after a certain number of authentication requests or something like that.
Right, so what routers responded and started doing was they started implementing rate limiting, which means that, yes, as soon as you get the wrong pin a certain number of times, it means that this attack will fail because it'll basically be timed out for a really long time, and something that would take about 14 hours and would almost always be able to get the password suddenly would take days or weeks, and that is simply too long for this attack to really be practical. So WPS is still vulnerable because of other reasons. Now, do you know what the WPS Pixie attack is?
I've definitely used it. So sort of.
Can you describe it?
I've
just like how it works. Is it fast? Like
it's pretty fast. Yes.
Cool. Yeah. So okay. So the WPS Pixie attack is a separate attack from Reaver that kind of spawned from needing to deal with this rate limiting thing. So let's say I want to break into a router. The password is as long as my arm. I have no idea what it is. It's super random. Well, it doesn't matter. I can still break in even if the router is doing rate limiting because there's a good amount of routers that use a bad random seed when they are attempting to begin the WPS negotiation process. So they're supposed to send a hashed version of some data, but because of the way that it's hashed, or the way that it uses a bad random seed to encrypt something, it makes it so that it's possible to just grab the WPS setup pin from the first part of the exchange. And this takes about 15 seconds. So again, the root of this vulnerability is there's supposed to be an exchange where something's encrypted, and unfortunately, it's not encrypted with a good random number. Alex, do you know why bad randomness is like so lethal for encryption?
Well, because usually, I mean, you can figure out like the seed or something and get access to all the random numbers that are generated like by a particular device that's like using a bad seed, And if you're able to predict these things, that makes them ineffective if they're trying to generate like a random pin or something like that.
That's actually exactly correct. Computers are really bad at coming up with random numbers, but we need random numbers in order for encryption to be effective. So this attack is basically based on the fact that some routers either use like the current time or they will use like the number 0 as the random seed. So your computer can very quickly try to generate random numbers using the same random number generator, starting with the same seed. And if that's possible, then it's really difficult to actually secure anything. And that's why the WPS protocol is still vulnerable. So I would say that Reaver as an attack does not work very well anymore because most routers now implement rate limiting. However, this other attack, WPS Pixie, still does work. And while not every router is vulnerable, it works incredibly fast and incredibly well when it does work. So this is, I would say, like this is kind of a part of Wi-Fi hacking that, you know, you get into like cracking and stuff and you don't really realize that there's some subsets of technical flaws out there that just allow you access almost like magic. So again, this only works maybe like 30 to 40% of the time, depending on where you are and what the policies of the internet service providers who are like giving out routers in that area are for how far locked down these are. But I would say that a good amount of routers are still vulnerable to WPS Pixie. Again, it's like waving a magic wand. You're just in 15 seconds, and all because the people who made this protocol picked a bad random seed. I just think that's funny that in the end it's math that is often the problem in these circumstances. So yeah, WPS Pixie still works. I would say Reaver does not work very well anymore unless you've got like a week to spend, you know, trying to log into something.
I've had good success with Pixie actually fairly recently.
Yeah, and of course there's also Bully. Bully's another tool that is specifically for attacking these protocols. I found that Bully works as well. So yeah, there's definitely tools out there that still work, but not all routers are going to be vulnerable to this anymore because this is quite a well-known attack, and most internet service providers, if they've heard of it, have done something about it.
Yeah, I've used tools like that all under like frameworks like Airgeddon and things like that, but I've never looked too much into how the technical details work, but that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. One also a follow-up question was, is the WPS Pixie attack on Reaver the same as the one used on Wi-Fi? Wi-Fi is a really fun tool that just goes buck wild on like the Wi-Fi networks you tell it to go crazy on, and it will go after them and hit them with a number of different attacks. So first they'll try grabbing a handshake. Have you ever used Wi-Fi?
No, I haven't.
It's cute. It's a cute tool, but it's been around for longer than like I've known about hacking. It was one of the first hacking tools that was shown to me by a friend. So yeah, it was really interesting to see that this tool is trying to incorporate so much stuff into it. So yeah, right now I'm kind of curious to see when the last time it was updated. Because really, like, Wi-Fi is a tool, again, that's been around for quite some time. I'm gonna go over on my screen to Wi-Fi and see. Yeah, so the last time Wi-Fi was updated was like 3 years ago. So I would say like very probably this tool is not using the most current version of Reaver or Bully or like anything else. So no, I don't think it is currently doing that. But I do love Wi-Fi. So if you haven't heard of it, it just goes off on stuff. I would say, if I had to choose my favorite Wi-Fi hacking tools, this would be in my top 5, but I would still put B-Side NG in front of it because B-Side NG is even crazier and seems to just work really, really well. I appreciate the design behind this though. Like it'll basically target a network and then it'll hit it with like 3 different separate attacks automatically. I just find that like it takes an absolutely it takes a ton of time. To the point that like I get kind of frustrated sometimes that it's digging in and going after like one particular network for such a long time when it's like clearly not working. So I like Wi-Fi, but I also think that there are more targeted attacks like B-Side NG or frameworks like Airgeddon end up being a little bit more accessible sometimes. I don't know. Wi-Fi is cool, but I just have had very poor success with it for some reason. I don't know. I've used it a lot, but I've just not really gotten it to be my favorite.
Yeah, Airgeddon's cool because it's just like sort of a wrapper for the Aircrack suite, which has been a pretty stable Wi-Fi hacking tool for a long time.
Yeah, and I mean, and more too.
Yeah.
So really cool to see this tool kind of sticking around for such a long time. But at the same time, there's other tools out there that do not exactly the same thing, but they do Wi-Fi hacking a little faster and more targeted, and those are the ones I tend to prefer. But still, if you haven't heard of it, it's a really awesome tool, and it's, like I said, it's been around for longer than me when it comes to Wi-Fi hacking. So it's been around there for quite some time. All right, let's take a look at the next question.
Cool. Do you believe that Windows 11 will be good for hacking?
Oh, yeah.
For being hacked into, maybe?
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely.
There's a whole lot of new vectors for it to be exploited. Like we were talking about WSL, which apparently there
can host malware.
Yeah, there were like payloads that could be staged for like how binaries are injected between the Linux processing system that interacts with Windows through WSL. So essentially, you could create like malicious binary files that are disguising themselves as like WSL processes.
Yeah, Windows 11 is going to be
stuff,
a whole new frontier. It's going to be great.
It's going to be interesting.
Unfortunately, I don't have a copy of it yet, but for people that are poking around with this, I mean, lots of people have already found issues with it. So yeah, I think it's going to be lots of fun. I can't wait to find all the various ways that people are going to destroy it. Cool. So also, if we go over to my Twitter, we had a couple of really good questions that I want to acknowledge from last week. So one of them was from Vic, who has appeared on our podcast before, back when we did that, and is super cool. And also was in our, I think, our facial recognition episode. We interviewed her with Hack5 at DEF CON, and she gave us a lot of really good perspective on different ways that we could try to dress up to hide from facial recognition. And then we actually did it. We went home and we dressed up Michael in a bunch of makeup, and we tested which methods actually work. So gotta acknowledge Vic's question because, you know, she's a friend of the show. So how do we convince organizations to patch devices in a timely manner when they have concerns about pushing changes to live systems? So I've actually, like, you know, usually the resistance I get to the kinds of things I find and report are, this sounds expensive. Are you sure we really need to do this? Does this make us money in any way? It doesn't. Okay, let's just wait on this. So usually the kind of concerns I get are from companies that are not technology companies. They are some other company that needs to use technology, and they just do not see the point in doing this quickly. They're like, listen. There's some like potential risk that could happen, but it hasn't happened yet, right? No? Okay. And you're just saying it could happen, like I could get hit by a bus tomorrow. Like, you know, like I got money I got to spend on marketing and sales, whatever else. Like, I'm not spending money on this. It makes me no money. It just prevents a disaster that could happen at any point anyway. That's how a lot of business owners feel when you bring them a problem that they need to fix. You know, it's the example that springs to mind is one time I was working at a place that used radios. And for some reason, every time the police drove by, we would hear their radios, which was kind of a red flag that maybe we weren't using like the right radios. So when I was promoted to manage equipment and be able to have more control over this, I did a little bit of research, and I came back and I was like, hey, these radios are operating on a completely illegal frequency that's been allocated to first responders. Like, we would get up to a $10,000 fine per radio that's operating in this frequency. So like we should probably spend about $1,000 to make sure that we have all the right equipment. It's not going to be that complicated. We just need to get a license. It's like $100 and then we're done. Like the whole, just ripping off the Band-Aid, we're done. As far as I know, they still use the same radios today.
Nice.
And they just have to be quiet when you know, police cars or helicopters go by. Because if they talk too much, then, you know, someone will probably yell at them on the frequency.
That's
like,
so dumb.
This is just the way that businesses like think sometimes. They're just like, it's not, you know, it could be a problem, it could not be a problem. Let's just see how long it takes until it's a problem. So I know I'm not addressing this specific, you know, question about, you know, live changes to like a production system. But I would say it's kind of the same argument. It's just like people are risk averse because they're just like, this is a potential threat. You know, I don't know if this is serious, but really like, you know, it could happen to anyone. And often it's only a matter of time if you don't take these sorts of things seriously. So I often have to tell scary stories to businesses that are really resistant to push security changes that are critical and that could actually harm them a lot more than they realize. So this is something that comes up a lot. Like the reasons are always different. Sometimes it's money. Sometimes they don't want to change something that's already working. But you know, getting the point across is often a matter of telling a story about something that's happened to another business or something that actually did happen, not a potential threat, and getting them to understand that this is like buying insurance. You know, like people do it because they they know something bad is going to happen eventually, and they want to make sure they're prepared for it. So this is kind of the same perspective to take. Good question, Vic. And then we have another one, which is, with the advent of Wi-Fi, will the advent of Wi-Fi 6 kill the world of hackers and makers, or will we just rotate to new exploits and attack vectors? Technically, 2 questions. So, Alex, do you think Wi-Fi 6 is going to kill the world of hackers and makers?
I don't think so. I don't know too much about the standard, but I think it just like increased the bandwidth of Wi-Fi or something on the new standard. Do you know anything about Wi-Fi 6?
WPA3, I believe.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So being able to use more robust encryption, like the Dragonfly handshake, is definitely a plus. It means that some of the attacks that have worked for a really long time against WPA2 are not going to work anymore. So yeah, as hackers, we're going to have to start moving on to other exploits and other methods of doing things that allow these same old tricks to work. So rather than fully moving over to, attacking like a superior type of encryption, we can just disable it or jam it in creative ways, or make it so that it's more difficult to use, so that the router or device that has to support older devices in this transition period that will last quite some time will be forced to downgrade the encryption to something that we can attack. So frequently, and this is something that Matthew Van Hoff pointed out to me when I asked him basically the same question while interviewing him. Basically, we don't need to abandon these attacks we've been using for such a long time. We can just downgrade encryption, because most of these devices are designed to be compatible with older devices and will fully support older versions of encryption for quite some time. This is a downgrade attack we see over and over again for lots of different things. But if a system supports, maybe like its least secure type of encryption, and you can force it to start using that, that's often the first place that hackers start when trying to attack anything that has good security. So that's just kind of the way this is going to evolve. Like, we're going to see more people learning how to downgrade WPA3 to WPA2, so we can just attack it the same old way. But there are some attacks against WPA3 that are notable that Matthew Van Hoff has come up with. So it's not totally going to be untouchable. There's already ways of taking a swing at it, but it's not as badly compromised as WPA2 when it comes to being able to brute force people's passwords or do some of the kind of stuff that's actually really easy to do. WPA3 is also designed to protect weak passwords a lot better. So even if your password sucks, it should still offer robust protection, whereas WPA2 is completely dependent on the strength of your password.
What are some of these new attacks besides the Dragon Blood attack that you were mentioning?
Well, that's kind of the main one.
I know we talked about fragmentation before.
So what you can do with the new standard includes things like being able to overwhelm the router and shut it down, basically by sending it too many handshakes that require too much processing and basically fill up what the resources the router has. So you can effectively jam WPA3 in some cases by overwhelming the security mechanism that they actually put into place to fix a different problem that Matthew Van Hoff found. So by increasing the processing overhead for each handshake, you make it possible for the attacker to overwhelm the device with just a ton of fake handshakes and make it so that it basically shuts down, which gives you the ability to jam the network. So it's kind of attacks like that.
Traditional DOS attack sort of.
Yeah, it's much more of a traditional DOS attack because we're not able to forage packets the way that we are with the WPA2, which doesn't validate management frames. There's no way of telling who they actually came from. This does, so that's a really major difference. But we can still act as a new device that's trying to join the network and just send a bunch of handshakes, which the router will have no choice but to process. And because they are using more robust encryption, it means that the processing takes a lot more overhead, and a smaller device like a router probably won't have the resources to put up with very many of them. Cool. All right. So yeah, if you have any other questions about Wi-Fi, that's kind of my specialty, so I really enjoy answering those in particular. Okay, so give me another question. What do we got next?
How has the pandemic affected the cybersecurity industry in your eyes?
Oh man, it seems that remote work is much more popular, so there's a lot of people who might be more non-traditional who are being hired at larger companies. So I would say that there's more talent at play, in some ways, because at the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of companies just fired people or laid people off because they were scared. So they just ejected a bunch of talent, and then all of a sudden remote work is very acceptable, and these people are able to work in places they feel more comfortable in some cases, even for companies where they might not feel comfortable going into the office. So I would say overall, I think the pandemic increased the amount of talent available in cybersecurity and like made remote work more of a thing, which of course increases the attack surface for people as well. So I would say, you know, for cybersecurity, like business-wise, the pandemic was good. For cybersecurity, in terms of practicality, it was a nightmare because everybody got online and they had no experience necessarily doing everything remotely. So a lot of people with very little support had to set a lot of things up to be connected to the internet.
Yeah, I was going to question that, like remote administration and things like that, people having to log in to like their companies, whatever, or things like that, that could be an attack vector possibly. With just having like so many people online, there's definitely that chance.
Definitely. Yeah. All right, let's take a look at another question. I actually am going to grab one from the chat. So one question that I kind of like is, can we hack a wireless mouse 2.4 gigahertz using a Node MCU as it also operates on 2.4 gigahertz and supports BLE? Well, wait. A Node MCU doesn't support BLE because it's based on the ESP8266. So that part, I'm not sure about. Now, I do know that I've seen some attacks with like the ESP32 going after like Bluetooth devices. I can't name a specific project because it might have been a fever dream, honestly. Like I haven't actually tried this. But there are attacks against some of these wireless devices that use Bluetooth or even use Wi-Fi to connect. I haven't seen any using the ESP8266.
Yeah, well the thing is with like the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum, there's so many different protocols that are designed to operate on the spectrum, like Wi-Fi being one of them. And the Node MCU is a microcontroller specifically designed to work with the Wi-Fi protocol. So it wouldn't be able to support the same like packet structure and things like that to interact with Bluetooth. A device like the ESP32 might be able to. I haven't looked too much into the Bluetooth functionality, but Bluetooth hacks themselves are pretty hard as far as I know. I don't know a ton about exploiting Bluetooth. But
yeah, Bluetooth is tricky because it uses signal hopping. So it's just, whereas Wi-Fi tends to operate on a single channel, Bluetooth hops as a part of its protocol. So it's just all over the place. It's much harder to sniff. It's much harder to follow. As far as I know, the Node MCU doesn't support it. And here's the thing: like when you're using like an ESP8266, you're basically interacting with whatever the developer has set up on the chip to be accessible. Right. And while it's possible to write arbitrary packets, they're still Wi-Fi packets. So that's how they're formatted when they're sent out. So really, like the most that's been done, to my knowledge, with the Node MCU or the ESP8266 in general, is being able to write arbitrary Wi-Fi packets to do stuff like deauthentication and other stuff like that by Spacioon. I don't know about being able to get lower level access to the radio to just send like arbitrary stuff on the cool 2.4 gigahertz channel. That would be really cool. You know, maybe with the evolution of some of these things to like, I don't know, like RISC-V or whatever, like there will be more open source ways of doing something like this. But for now, I know that you have to go through what is mostly like a kind of like a closed, well, I guess they've released like an open source like version of the SDK kit, but it's still like, it's not super easy to just like send arbitrary radio signals. You still have to like play with the APIs the developer has like built into the system and call the kinds of things that it's expecting. You can't just like, well, you probably could if you really wanted to, but as far as I know, no, unfortunately, I don't know of any projects using the ESP8266 for that, but it sounds cool. And it also, I think that probably the ESP32 would be your platform of choice if you wanted to get in and start doing like some Bluetooth hacking stuff. Is reverse engineering necessary in hacking? Again, it depends on what type of hacking you want to get into. Right. If you are going to be somebody that does incident response,
like reverse engineering, I guess.
Yeah, like then yeah, you would probably want to know how stuff is working and like what it's doing, and like a background in computer science or programming would really, really help you figure that out. If you're doing something totally different, like pen testing, you're probably not going to do a lot. Well, maybe you could do some reverse engineering in pen testing. That could be your thing. But you could also be in pen testing and never do any reverse engineering because you know Metasploit super well, or you know the tools that are out there to do a reasonable assessment of the business you're going up against, and you don't need to reverse engineer anything at all. So there's lots of jobs in cybersecurity and ethical hacking that have nothing to do with reverse engineering at all. If you like reverse engineering, there's lots of jobs that include it, and you can probably make a lot of money doing it too. But yeah, it's not necessary, and if you want to get into hacking and you're not particularly interested in reverse engineering, it's not really something you need to touch if you don't want to.
Yeah. That being said, it is really cool though.
It is really cool.
And it gives you like a fundamental understanding of how things work and can be exploited.
So we have a lot of questions about the Facebook outage, and I think we're probably going to cover that on the Friday stream, mostly because there's some news out about it, and people are still trying to figure it out, but a lot of it is unsubstantiated. So I want to make sure that we're accurate when we tell you, because we're honestly still figuring it out too. But it was delightful to see that everything was down yesterday, so people could reconnect with their families and friends and get off the get off the Facebook. Not related to hacking. Do you think getting a mechanical keyboard is a good choice when you're typing a lot?
I hate mechanical keyboards. They're so noisy.
I think that
they're fun though.
If you like run Arch and like need to let everybody know like that your typing is like very important and serious to the point that it impinges on like their thoughts like when they're just in the same room as you, then yes, getting a mechanical keyboard is great. I got a mechanical keyboard and it's very satisfying. But then again, I also have it in my own room, so it's not bothering anyone. If you're working in a space with other people, it tends to annoy them a lot.
Kind of disruptive.
Yeah. All right, let's do another question.
Cool. Is the WPS Pixie attack on Reaver the same as the one used on Wi-Fi?
Oh wait, we already answered that one.
Oh, did we?
Yeah, I think we answered that one. And the answer is no, because it has because Wi-Fi has not been updated in 3 years.
Yes. What is the best place or app to get the latest attack news? What do we use on Friday streams? I think we use like Bleeping Computer. I don't know of any others.
Bleeping Computer, Hackaday does a series as well on like weekly like news. But honestly, where I get my information tends to be from Twitter. So I'll follow like a bunch of cybersecurity professionals. Like I will follow people that retweet the latest tools. And I will also look on websites like Kitploit or just like look on GitHub to try to find projects that have a lot of people paying attention to it or using it. Sometimes these tools will get really popular in a community that I have no visibility on. However, if a lot of people are using the tool, I can see that on GitHub if a lot of people are starring it or if they're like making like polls to it or whatever. So it's interesting to be able to use some of these metrics to find emerging or trending tools that are targeting a specific vulnerability or doing something really new and interesting. And that's usually where I find mine, but I would say the majority of mine I find on Twitter. Second to that, I find some on GitHub and Kitsploit.
Cool. This one I know you've covered a few tools for before. What's a good tool? Oh no, it went out of focus.
Yeah, I know.
Dang it. But the question was, how do you basically put up an evil access point, and what's a good tool to do that?
I guess it depends on what exactly you're trying to do. Again, Armageddon has a module for that that's quite effective.
Yeah.
If you're just doing something like Wi-Fi phishing, for example, you can get somebody to connect to like the wrong access point and then attempt to get them to put in their password into a fake like router prompt that says the router's updating or whatever. This kind of phishing is probably my favorite sneaky way of getting the Wi-Fi password because it just makes the person using the Wi-Fi thinks that their router is performing an update. You can actually do that on the ESP8266 v3 deauthor. I know because I insisted on this feature being built, and it's a really cool example of how Wi-Fi phishing can work on a tiny little cheap microcontroller. Aside from that, I would say, yeah, Armageddon is the wrapper that has a lot of Wi-Fi related tools, including the like man-in-the-middle style stuff. And you can really configure it to be however you want. There's lots of options built into it. So that would be my recommendation rather than any specific tool. The wrapper itself is pretty good for getting all of them together.
Yeah, Wi-Fi Fisher's pretty cool.
Yeah, what about Fluxion, the future of man-in-the-middle? So we covered Fluxion such a long time ago. And the motto of Fluxion was just, Fluxion is the future, which I think is like both a little creepy and funny. I also am not sure that it's been updated in like a long time. So I'm gonna do, let's see, I'm gonna go over here. And on my screen, I'm now looking at Fluxion. So let's see, is Fluxion in fact the future? Hey, 4 months ago. That's cool. Actually interesting. So this was a tool that I kind of counted as like abandoned or like not really maintained very well. The #1 Wi-Fi cracker. That's a bold assessment, but there's no industry standard for cracking tools. So I guess you can say whatever you want. Fluxion is the future of man-in-the-middle WPA attacks. Well, it's too bad we went over to WPA 3 now, but okay. Cool. So this is a tool you can try. It's, as far as I know, will look for handshakes. It'll try to launch a captive portal attack, spawns a DNS server, redirects all requests to the attacker's host. So it looks like it's kind of upgraded itself from what was happening before. But yeah, it's a cool tool. I've covered it. I think it was one of the first tools I covered on Nullbyte, but I'm encouraged to see that it's been updated and that it wasn't just the README. Often, like, I'll see a tool that's been. I will say, if you look at this though, like most of these things have not been changed, like the actual Fluxion.sh. None of these have been updated. Well, okay, never mind. That was 4 months ago. But a lot of these have not been updated in 3 years. So moderate your expectations using a tool that mostly hasn't been updated in 2 to 3 years. However, this seems like it's still under development, so that's pretty cool. And it looks like they even have a little website. Yeah, cool. So yeah, maybe we'll try this out. If you guys want to see how this works, then perhaps we will give this a try. But it's just been around for such a long time, I almost forgot about it, to be honest. So thank you for reminding me. Okay, what do we got next?
I am a web penetration tester, but with wireless. Is it possible to act as a keyboard?
What? Okay.
I think they want to spoof a device that sort of looks like a keyboard, maybe over Bluetooth or something like that. Hypothetically, like a device that can be connected to as an attack surface to do stuff.
Sorry, restate the question. It perplexes me.
With wireless, is it possible to act as a keyboard?
Okay, great. So maybe we're talking about the Wi-Fi Dock. The Wi-Fi Dock might be a good thing to talk about. So there is
I'm a little confused about this question.
Yeah, there is a wireless tool that you can plug into any computer and then have it act as a keyboard, if that is what you mean. So the beauty of the system is you're able to plug it in and then send it a payload after. And that's nice because you might not know what kind of computer you're going to plug this into when you're initially programming it. So you can write 3 different scripts for 3 different operating systems, plug it in, and then run it. Yeah, so there are some other tools that will allow you to like do the same style of attack like from inside of the actual charger or the cable, like the OMG cable. That's also pretty cool. But yeah, not totally sure what exactly that one.
I was thinking something a little more fancy, like emulating a keyboard that could be connected to, that would like hack your computer if you connected to it over Bluetooth.
That would be pretty
something
cool.
like that. But yeah.
You can, so there's like hijacking attacks I know of that will allow you to be able to access, like kick off a mouse maybe that's already connected and then emulate it. But as far as I know, yeah, not necessarily like just create a completely new fictitious device and then like attach it to the computer without like having somebody pairing on the other side. If you do have physical access to the computer, I bet you could pair like a virtual like keyboard or something over Bluetooth and then have that be stored, but you would still need the physical access in the first place to actually pair it and get it to you know, set itself up. I forgot my Gmail account password and also lost my recovery phone number.
Oh,
well,
no.
I'm sorry
Sounds
that
like a
you're
job
having.
for you.
Yeah, it sounds like I'm sorry that you're having a bad day.
Cool. Do you want to take a question from the YouTube real quick?
Sure, let's do it.
Cool. Anybody ever tell you that you look like that British guy from Map Men?
What?
You guys look like twins, 100% doppelgangers.
Okay, switching over to my screen, I briefly looked this up. I
have no clue who these guys are, but that looks nothing like you.
Neither, like, which one of these guys? I don't know. They have the same thumbnail, too, for everything. I don't know what these guys do. I hope they don't swear right now. I'm sorry, is this who you're talking about?
That's so insulting.
I am insulted, sir. You are not going to win our prize this week, purely for this. I mean, whatever. He's
all right, Matt.
This guy he's not a bad-looking guy. He just doesn't look like me. Like, I mean, I definitely know you're not talking about this guy, so he's off the table. But if you're talking about this guy doesn't friggin' look like me. What?
That's what you think, Map Man.
Okay, all right. Well, you watch it.
Right.
Wait until people start telling you who you look like.
The map boy. I don't know.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, all right. Let's take the next question. I don't use TikTok. It is evil. You should get off it ASAP. What is wrong with you?
Sent on social media. Okay. Yeah.
Cool.
So this question was left on our. I guess it is a question. It was left on our YouTube, which arguably is not that much better than TikTok. So let's talk about TikTok and what people don't like about it. Now, just like YouTube has been found to be multiple times, TikTok tends to aggressively analyze what the people who are viewing it are watching and then refer them to more and more extreme stuff. So that means if you're reacting or liking or spending more time on a particular type of video, the website like YouTube or app like TikTok is going to notice that stuff and start sending you more things that are related to that topic. Now, I found that this can be problematic because when I was on TikTok, I would maybe like a joke that Irish people were making, and then very quickly get pulled into Irish Republican Army TikTok, like without very much of a buffer between just casually liking something that's a joke and then being pulled into a much more serious political commentary. So obviously for kids and other people who are still growing up and a bit suggestible, this can definitely be an issue. But as a form of media, TikTok is extremely difficult to master, but gets a lot of attention very quickly and focuses on a format that is really hard to get right. Getting a video that is short, punchy, and then gets a lot of attention is really difficult. So for us, being on TikTok is a way of engaging people who are curious about hacking, but maybe haven't ever really focused on it, because it's the shortest, most accessible content that we can possibly make. It is really, really hard to make, again, but the reward is being able to deliver the kind of things that we do to people in a small bite-sized chunk that's really fun to watch and hopefully gets them interested in learning a little bit more. We're not going up against TikTok. And also I would say that arguably Facebook is so much worse. Yeah. That Facebook, Instagram, and I would say probably also YouTube are just as bad. So
I think everyone's equally bad in
no.
The sketchy metrics they gather on it. Really?
No, not everybody is equally bad. That's not true.
Well, not everyone, but
the big players probably.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, but I would say TikTok is often bad because it targets kids and people don't like that. And having an app that kind of pushes kids towards more and more extreme content is obviously going to be good for the app's metrics, but it's not going to be good for the kids themselves. But the irony of being asked this question on YouTube is still strong with me. So. It's a persistent problem, and there are platforms we won't go on. People have asked us to go onto BitChute forever, but some of the content that's on BitChute is also pretty reprehensible. So literally, we would be seeing our content right next to some far right stuff that can't even exist on normal platforms. So there's some platforms we haven't gone to just because we don't want to be there. But TikTok so far hasn't been on our blacklist just because, it's a great place for being able to get people interested in cybersecurity. And I don't think that me not being on it is going to help very much. So, all right, let's do another one.
Cool. Hi guys, love hacking with, okay, this is a long one, so strap yourself down.
All right.
Love hacking with friends. Very informative, and I've learned a lot from you as a newbie in ethical hacking. This is my favorite YouTube channel.
Aww.
My question is, why some professionals in this field, they have my respects, mention certain techniques that are from amateurs? For example, if someone who wants to connect to a Wi-Fi router and does not know the password and has physical access to the router and resets it without any special tool, does that make him lame as part of his learning? Is low-tech hacking not valid anymore? Any professional who are now recognized did not start out as rookies? Just curious. Thank you and keep up your excellent work. What do you think about this?
Yes, this is an interesting question. I would say that we get comments about this all the time, where we will show off a social engineering attack or something else that works really well, and someone will be like, "This is not hacking." And I'd be like, "What? What is your basis for determining that?"
War driving.
Yeah.
So 2001.
Somebody will come in and be like, "This, I'm sorry, sir. You must not know. This is not hacking." And I'm like, "What do you mean this is not hacking?" Hacking is when a computer hurts another computer, okay? This is a person hurting a computer, and therefore it's not hacking. So people have all sorts of made up, wacky, crazy definitions for hacking that get offended when someone performs a clever attack that doesn't work the traditional way you would expect. But I would argue that clever attacks that don't work the traditional way you expect are the best attacks. So often these sorts of low skill attacks might have some sort of barrier that makes them less practical for the average person. If you have to go and physically reset a router, it means you're a sneaky guy or gal. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's a technique that's going to work for everyone. If I know that the router on the other side of the counter is vulnerable, but I would have to sneak back into the business in the dead of night to attack it, raises a lot of other issues. So sometimes these low-tech attacks will have really substantial downsides. And that's something that, is just kind of inevitable for the style of attack. But also sometimes they're the only things that work because there's not a good attack surface. And other times, maybe they're the lowest hanging fruit and they're the easiest way of being able to break in. So I would say, no, it doesn't make someone lame doing low-tech attacks. In fact, like some of the most clever attacks are low-tech attacks that are unexpected. But they often come with drawbacks that make it less applicable to the average person who doesn't want to break into a business in the dead of night or like social engineer their way into a situation when there's an exploit that would work just fine.
Yeah.
I will say though that I think the most successful hackers are flexible between using like non-technical social engineering attacks and highly technical exploits. If you have a blend of the two techniques, I mean that's what like SIM swapping is. It's not even a technical attack. There's no script that I know of for like doing SIM swapping. You literally have to call the business and pretend to be someone that you're not. And if you can do that, then this chain of technical attack proceeds. But some people might even say like SIM swapping isn't hacking. It's like, okay, well then why do they have access to every single one of your accounts? Yeah. It seems like then you just got tricked, huh? But I mean, hacking is just kind of tricking on a certain level. So I don't understand the whole like debate around it sometimes because people really get upset about this when we do post videos that are like not just an exploit that runs and then gives you immediate access to another computer, but expand your definitions of hacking, you guys. There's lots of stuff out there that is hacking that might not be traditionally considered so, apparently. All right, so this is one question, and no, I do not mind you asking it twice because I think it's a good question. What is the industry standard for determining what is encrypted versus what is hashed? Or is mostly everything just encrypted, only personal details and passwords are hashed?
I think hashing more or less like messes around with the order of text. It like obfuscates it in a predetermined way using patterns. Whereas I would say encryption, I don't know how to explain it precisely, but if you could elucidate my thoughts in that direction, that'd be great.
Yeah. So this has to do with breaches, basically, because when a database is breached, it really matters whether or not the company has been storing, for example, like user credentials as a hashed version or as an encrypted version. So a hash is a one-way process in which we take a value and we convert it into a number. And the number is supposed to be unique enough that any variation on the original will cause it to be completely different. So that's often how websites will store things like user information, like user passwords. But that actually sucks because hashes are easy to reverse, or at least most of them are easy to reverse. If you have like a list of passwords you suspect, or if you're doing a brute forcing attack. So if I was a website and I had all of my passwords hashed with MD5 or something,
right?
That's okay, great. That's wonderful. But if a hacker was able to get access to this, then they could just brute force all of them with not that much time at all. So this is something where a lot of businesses will be like, oh, we can't store plain text, let's store it hashed, and then it doesn't work. Like they still breach their customers' passwords, and this really isn't very much of a bar for hackers to get over at all. So the next step up would be hashing and salting. Adding a salt to a hash adds a pseudo-random value or even a fixed value to the actual hash in order to make it less predictable. So you can't
The spider's back.
Oh, sorry.
Great.
Michael's killing a spider. He did a good job, though. Yeah, that was great.
I hope it's that same one that attacked me on the last stream.
Oh, yeah, I remember that guy.
Yeah.
Right. So we closed a plot loop here. Alex was attacked weeks ago, and now Michael has taken care of the spider. Anyway, so with a salted hash, then at least it's a little bit harder for the hacker to go in and start reversing stuff. But as soon as you figure out the salt, then we're back to the same circumstance. Now, there's some other things like bcrypt that will allow you to encrypt a password in a way that is not the same, where every time you hash it, it doesn't come out to the same value. This is really good because it makes it a lot harder to brute force it, because it means that the algorithm just isn't set up to be an efficient brute forceable algorithm. It's going to take a lot of time and resources to attack the stored credentials if you use something like this. So that being said, lots of businesses just stop at the hashed and salted. That's unfortunately not enough, and you'll find that a lot of places will say, oh, our passwords are encrypted, but they're not encrypted. They're actually just hashed and salted. So that would really be the difference. Like an encrypted file means that there's like a key that will fully restore the data and that it's stored with randomness that's strong enough that you really need like a private key or something else in order to peel that back. Hashing offers no such protection. With the addition of Assault, you can make it a bit more difficult, but it's not as strongly protected as encryption. So, you know, a lot of businesses do not properly store user credentials, user data, and that's how it gets out. And also, sometimes they won't even bother to encrypt things like databases full of encrypted information that don't need to be plain text and they don't need to be, you know, otherwise like exposed. But they leave them open, and that's when they get their full disk image copied and then leaked. So yeah, I would say also, can you hash a database and do anything then with that hashed version?
Not necessarily.
No, because the difference between a hash and encryption is that you can hash it, or you can encrypt a database, but if you hash the database, you just end up with a number.
Right.
And it's great for being able to determine if any changes have happened to the database, but it doesn't contain the database, whereas the encrypted version of the database actually contains all of the original information. So a lot of information there about like encryption versus hashing, but frankly, like businesses are not always very clear about this when they're disclosing during breaches, like what data is out there. Again, like some things like bcrypt are much better for storing credentials and make it hard for an attacker to brute force. But like MD5, no one cares about that. That's going to be able to be reversed very, very quickly. And it's not an effective security practice because even though you're not storing the data of the password, it's just a number that represents it. There's only one password that will ever equal that number using something like MD5. So that's really the flaw. Whereas with something like bcrypt, you could encrypt this, you could run the same password through the algorithm 5 different times and you'll get 5 different numbers, which means it's very difficult to brute force. So different standards make it easier to store and keep data and make sure that it's not leaked as soon as it is accessed in a way that people weren't intending. But unfortunately, most businesses do not take the step of locking down data this way.
Cool. We have a relevant question.
How
much data over a Wi-Fi network is actually hashed versus data that is just encrypted? Like if you're sniffing a Wi-Fi network, how much of that data is actually hashed?
Very little. So if you're sniffing a Wi-Fi network, you're going to be dealing almost exclusively with encrypted data. The only thing that's hashed is during like parts of the, so some of the data is hashed in that it has like a verification number that like lets you know if any data has been corrupted in transit. So like if the hash within the Wi-Fi packet itself doesn't match, then often the packet itself will just be discarded. So there is that going on. And then there's also authentication that's happening. So when a new device joins a Wi-Fi network, it'll submit a hashed version of the password and the two will compare and then determine whether or not it is the correct network and whether or not that device is allowed on it. So those are really the circumstances when you will see hashing, but the majority of the time that you're connected to a Wi-Fi network that has a password, everything you're doing is going to be encrypted. This encryption is not like crazy strong in that, once you get the password, like you're able to go back and actually see the entirety of the conversation, which is bad. There's other types of encryption where that's not possible, where, if you were to get the password later, you couldn't go back and decrypt the conversation, like the new version of WPA3. So lots of really cool stuff with encryption, and the math really matters. Like it's really limited by, the numbers here with what you can do. But yeah, very good question. So I would say the majority of what you're looking at with Wi-Fi is going to be encrypted, but in Wireshark, you can go in and put an encryption key, like you can either put the password, the SSID, the name of the network and the password, or you can put in a PSK value. And if you do that, then it will actually decrypt all the traffic that you're looking at, and you can just kick back and in real time watch Wi-Fi traffic and read it, and strip away the encryption. So that's really cool. Of course, you need somebody to have freshly connected to the network in order to see their stuff. You can't do that for a device that's been connected for hours and hasn't gone off the network. But yeah, like in general, you can see through the encryption on a Wi-Fi network if you know the password and you're using something like Wireshark. They jumped my question. We'll get to it if it's good. Don't worry. Don't worry.
Hey, what laptop brands are you guys using? I am looking forward to buy for hacking.
Another
chance for us to pitch an offer to Lenovo to give us free ThinkPads.
Lenovo, if you're listening,
please
send me a new ThinkPad.
Please, we get asked this question so much.
Yeah.
I really want to say we're revving ThinkPads.
Yeah, I would love that. Instead, let me talk about how much I don't look like MacBook Pros for hacking again. So yeah, MacBook Pros are expensive and they don't allow you to do certain Wi-Fi stuff, which is really critical for hacking. In fact, it's so difficult to even do Wi-Fi stuff in a virtual machine that it sounds like this thing is taking off as soon as I try to just do Wi-Fi sniffing on this like $3,000 computer. Now, fortunately, this is a work computer, so I'm a lot less mad about it. But if you're looking to invest your own money in like a hacking computer or something to do hacking with, a Linux ThinkPad is probably. Yeah. I have an old Linux ThinkPad, and I use it all the time. The problem is it has a proprietary charger and like a DVD drive, so it's a bit old.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say ThinkPads are really good for this sort of thing, and MacBooks are not.
Right. I have this like ThinkPad from my high school, so it's kind of messed up still, but it works the way I want it to, and I would recommend getting one. The newer ones are definitely cool.
A funny question, how would you get into a secure organization? Well, the first step would be finding out whether or not they're actually secure, because in most cases, organizations that think they're secure are not. And then I guess the second step would be figuring out the lowest hanging fruit and seeing whether it's the people that are vulnerable or the technology that's vulnerable, because it's two different styles of attacks. And frankly, if the people are vulnerable, like there's some secretary who will just, plug in any USB drive that she finds in the parking lot, then it's usually a lot easier to go after a secure organization by going after its people that are not following the best security practices.
Yep. Do you see any good questions, or should we take one from YouTube?
Let's do one from YouTube.
Cool. We're actually going to switch over to the YouTube chat on one of my old videos, which is on my screen.
That's not that old.
Or actually, no, I lied to you. This is my most recent video
that
came out about 6 days or so ago, which is on detecting Wi-Fi attacks on the Wi-Fi Nugget. So
this is the Wi-Fi Nugget, if you haven't seen it. This is the design by myself and Alex that is finally ready and is being now sold actually on hackat.com. And yeah, this has been programmed by Alex to look for Wi-Fi attacks and get really angry every time it sees an attack in the area. So
yeah, doesn't like Wi-Fi hacking crimes. So as you can see here, I'm running a demonstration with the Aircrack suite. So it's like a deauthentication attack. Oh no, that's me.
Hey,
Gross.
It's you.
Where's the actual nugget? Okay, so like this is the Wi-Fi nugget. You can see there's a brief. God dang it. Okay. But anyways, when it detects a Wi-Fi attack, this is what's supposed to happen. The nugget will turn red. It shows like a cute little face that shames you for your Wi-Fi hacking crimes.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it can be programmed for things like Wi-Fi hacking CTFs, It's just a really cool beginner tool we created. But I'm going to take a few questions that were left on this video.
Yeah.
Let's see. Could someone please tell me if this is also possible with an ESP32, or does the ESP32 not support this kind of wireless monitoring?
Good question.
Yeah, we were going to be looking into using the ESP, or rather the new ESP32 derivative, which is the S2. Cody's been working with that as a platform for MicroPython. We know there is support for doing the same kind of wireless monitoring, although some features, I think, like packet injection, haven't been figured out yet since they're not like officially supported. But we do know someone who's like actively reverse engineering how that works to be able to do the same features.
Yeah, so the ESP32 is actually awesome at monitoring. It's actually even better than the ESP8266. The problem with the ESP8266 is that it clips packets. Like at a certain point, it truncates packets, so you can't actually get access to all the information in the packets that it's receiving. So the nice thing about the ESP32 is that it can receive all of these packets, which means you could potentially do things like grab Wi-Fi handshakes, which is a lot more exciting. So I would say that actually the ESP32 is a better platform for Wi-Fi sniffing, but it is a worse platform for Wi-Fi injection currently, because Spacioon has worked very hard on making sure that you can inject arbitrary packets on the ESP8266, and currently there's no way to do this, at least publicly, on the ESP32. So that means that you're stuck with just listening on the ESP32 for the most part, but it is still really good at that. So for this particular thing that we're working on, yes, that would totally work, and you would in fact be able to probably add even more information if you wanted to.
Yeah. Can I use a DStyke Wi-Fi deauthor watch with this, or does it have to be a Wi-Fi Nugget? So we made this project open source. It works on a variety of platforms, including the Wi-Fi deauthor watch, so you should be able to run that code there.
Yeah, so the Wi-Fi deauthor watch was actually the inspiration for the Wi-Fi Nugget and some other projects. I was actually having a conversation with Stefan where I was just like, hey, You know what the best the best hardware iteration of your code has been so far? It's this like stupid watch. Like, you know, like I see tons of people with it. It's useful. It performs like a basic function. It's like a terrible watch, but it's awesome for
Just looks
Wi-Fi.
like an ankle monitor, but for your wrist.
Yeah, yeah,
It's so thick.
Yeah, it does look like an ankle monitor. But you know, like I was really impressed by the fact that you can use this with nothing else. You can use the buttons on it to basically access the code directly, and it doesn't do everything. Like the version 3 of the deauthor does way more. But the advantage here is like it's ready to go. It's like right there, and you can just plug it in and get it working without any sort of other thing with you. So I really like that, and I wanted to take some inspiration from that to make something like the Wi-Fi Nugget, where it's just immediately useful. You plug it in, it starts up, and you don't need like a computer or a phone or something to access like a web interface. It just works. So we took a lot of inspiration from the deauthor watch, but we also decided that we didn't like some things about it, like the fact that it is incredibly thick, or the fact that it has like a LiPo battery when it doesn't really need one, and like it also doesn't have ears and it's not cute. So we set out to fix a lot of these problems with the Wi-Fi Nugget, and that's why you know, the Wi-Fi Nugget's cute. It's got buttons that are like nice and accessible. It's also got a NeoPixel out, so unlike the D-Stike watch, this allows you to attach up to, I think, actually more than 100 NeoPixels. We've done, I think, up to 300 NeoPixels.
Yeah.
And it allows you to control them using MicroPython or Arduino or whatever you want. So it's really cool to be able to use like community projects to control strips of LEDs, or just write your own code to do so on this little project. So unlike the D-Stike watch, this also has, at least in its current version, sharp ears for self-defense. So you know, it's designed for a variety of different uses. Hey, yeah, see, it hurts.
Yeah, you can use this for network defense, but also personal defense. So if anyone offends you, you can just give them a good poke with the Wi-Fi Nugget.
This is true.
Let me see if there's another question on this.
One question was, what chip designing tool do you use?
Chip designing. Oh,
I guess you probably mean like PC,
circuit board
printed
design.
board design.
Yeah. So I use KiCad. I've used it for a lot of the circuit board designs we do, because as you can see here, we're doing some pretty fancy circuit board art and things like that. So using a design tool like KiCad gives me all the integrated features I need to do cool stuff like create custom circuit board outlines that you can't do like in Easy EDA. I can add like art on the board. As you can see, there's like a little nugget back here that one of our friends drew. Yeah, I use KiCad. It's really great.
Yeah. So this is something that I was slowly learning Easy EDA. And there are some drawbacks to this if you're doing more advanced stuff, like you want to do a lot of like PCB art, stuff like that. But you know, it is a good way to get started, and Alex was able to show me how to use it like relatively quickly. So yeah, it was actually really cool.
Maybe I'll demonstrate it sometime on a stream.
Yeah. And thank you for asking how we designed this Nugget. It was actually super fun and super cute. We've been working on this for like a month and a half, almost, well, actually probably more like 2 months now. Yeah. So it's really awesome to finally have this done. And the creation process has been wild. You know, Alex initially created this in Easy EDA and then moved it over to KiCad. And then we've also been engaging with some PCB sponsors who have been helping us out. So a big shout out to Elaine at PCBWay and also Chris at JLC PCB for helping us on this and one of our other designs. It was great to have the support of some companies who also thought what we were making was really cool. So yeah, came up with the design, reached out to some PCB people. They decided to help us out. And now we've got this cute Nugget. I will say though that the first 2 versions did not work.
Yeah,
it's just something. Yeah, it's just something that happens when you're designing PCBs. There was one of them had actually this was for our Hackat. One of them had an error in Easy EDA where it caused a short, and the only way to get the board to work was to cut the traces with like a razor.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, it didn't detect like when one of the wires was like crossing over another. So we ended up just like completely overlooking that, and we had like a ground line that was running straight into 5 volts.
Yeah, and it just killed the board. It just like would not boot. But as soon as you cut it, then suddenly it would work again. So there was a lot of troubleshooting. There was some drama. But we figured it out. And the process of creating like your own piece of hardware is hard, and it's a bit expensive. But especially if you're able to get a PCB supplier to sponsor the design or help you out with it, then it becomes a lot easier, because we would have been in for like a couple $100s in PCBs otherwise if it wasn't for their help. So yeah, the support of the community really helped us out. There's lots of great projects that run on this that we did not write. We only ported this project. So this was a hardware-focused project for the most part, and it's been a lot of fun getting to get our hands dirty and create something totally from scratch.
Yeah.
This isn't really a question, but when I was a fence builder, I learned that security is really just an illusion. It keeps 99% of the idiots out, but if someone really wants in, they will get in.
That's a good analogy.
That is the best metaphor for cybersecurity I've ever heard. Like, it will keep 99% of idiots out, but if you really want to get in, like, there's probably going to be a way you find it to get in. Okay, I think that we've answered most of the questions I can answer. There's a couple technical ones that I'm just frankly not totally sure, such as why everyone busy on Wi-Fi hacking? Because it's fun.
Yeah, it's cool.
I guess I can't answer that.
Where's Michael? I talked to Sasquatch. He forgives him for his
Oh,
misunderstanding.
good. Well, we'll have to find Michael. He's been gone for weeks in the woods trying to find the Squatch to apologize in person. But if all is forgiven, then maybe Michael could come back someday. So, yeah,
Yeah,
this is Michael now.
I've changed form factors.
We're on Michael 4 now.
Yeah, we're on Michael 4 now. So
Yeah.
Michael has been focusing on his production duties and has been leveling up and producing such masterpieces as Alex's last Hack 5 episode.
Right.
So
Which I shot on the day it released.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you might not see Michael, but you're feeling his touch and
He's
his
here in
presence.
spirit.
Exactly, because
Yeah.
he's the one producing all the stuff that we are doing. So do not worry, he's still alive, seeking the Squatch, and you will see him again. By the way, also I had a friend come through and give me this like Kali Linux shirt that is just excellent. It has like a kind of like a bro,
Yeah, it's great.
like a tribal tattoo on
Yeah.
the side. Yeah, so that's
That's pretty rad. I just have like a
If
lame
anybody-
black shirt and hoodie.
Yeah,
that
if
does
anybody
this.
missed this or thought I'd gotten a tribal tattoo, then you're wrong. This is in fact just me showing my love for the new version of Kali Linux.
Nice.
All right, that's all the time we have for today. We're going to pick a question from this session to be our lucky winner, and we will announce this on our Friday stream. And if you are the question that we select, then you will win a $100 Hack5 gift card. So join us on Friday to find out who's the winner. Of course, if you are the winner and you can't make it, we will still reply to your comment and let you know that you won. But yeah, thank you to everyone who submitted a question. If your question didn't get picked this week, or if you have a new question you'd like to submit, make sure to drop them on my Twitter or on the YouTube channel, preferably the YouTube channel so we can find it easily, and we'll make sure it gets answered next week, and you'll automatically be entered to win a $100 Hack5 gift card. So, all right, everyone, we will see you later in the week. Thank you very much for your questions. Bye.